My grandfather called me to a property I'd never visited. When I came around the bend, there was a house. He said, "Took a little longer than I planned." He'd been building it in secret for 12 years. Original post. I'm sitting in my truck in the driveway of a house I didn't know existed until 4 hours ago, and I can't stop shaking. I'm a 41-year-old man. I run a logistics company. I've negotiated contracts worth millions. And right now I'm crying so hard I can't see my phone screen. Let me back up. My name is Ethan Callaway. I lived, in a 2-bedroom rental in Beaverton, Oregon, about 20 minutes west of Portland. I've been there for 6 years. Before that, I was in a series of apartments, each one a little bigger, each one a little closer to something I told myself I'd eventually own. I never got there. Life kept happening. A failed business in my late 20s. A divorce at 33 that cleaned me out. Rebuilding from scratch in my mid-30s, pouring everything into the logistics company I started from a single used box truck and a prayer. My grandfather, Harold Callaway, everyone calls him Pop, is 78 years old. He's a retired carpenter. Spent 41 years building houses for other people in and around the greater Portland metro area. His hands look like topographic maps. He's got a bad knee, a good heart, and a stubbornness that could outlast granite. My parents are David, 62M, and Sheila, 59F, Callaway. My dad is Pop's only son. I have one sibling, my sister Megan, 38F. We're not a broken family. We're not estranged. We eat Thanksgiving together. We call on birthdays. But there are tensions. There have always been tensions. My dad and Pop have never been close in the way that matters. They're polite. They're cordial. But there's a wall there that went up decades ago, long before I was born, and neither of them has ever had the tools or the will to take it down. My mom has always resented Pop a little, I think, because she married into a family where emotional warmth came in very small portions. My sister Megan is fine. She's a dental hygienist in Eugene, married, 2 kids, lives her life. She and Pop exchange Christmas cards, and that's about it. And then there's me and Pop. Here's the thing about my grandfather, he doesn't talk much. He never has. He's not cold, he's just quiet. The kind of man who says more with a nod than most people say in a paragraph. When I was a kid, I used to follow him around his workshop in his backyard in Tigard. He'd be building cabinets or repairing furniture or just sharpening tools, and I'd sit on an overturned bucket and watch. He never told me to leave. He never performed for me. He just let me be there. When I was 12, he taught me how to use a hand plane. When I was 15, he showed me how to read a blueprint. When I was 19 and flunking out of community college because I had no idea what I wanted to be, he drove me to a job site where he was framing a house in Lake Oswego and said, "You don't have to know what you want. You just have to know how to show up." I showed up. I didn't become a carpenter. But I learned how to show up. That lesson carried me through everything. The failed business, the divorce, the years of rebuilding. Every time I hit a wall, I heard Pop's voice. You just have to know how to show up. So this morning, Pop calls me. He almost never calls. He's a face-to-face man. The phone is a concession to modernity that he tolerates the way he tolerates traffic, with visible displeasure. But he calls and he says, "Ethan, I need you to come out to the Helvetia property." The Helvetia property. Pop owns a 7-acre parcel out near Helvetia, northwest of Portland, in unincorporated Washington County. It's rural. Rolling hills, oak trees, views of the Coast Range. He bought it 30-some years ago for practically nothing. We all assumed he was holding it as a retirement investment, or maybe just like knowing he owned a piece of land that nobody could bother him on. He goes out there sometimes. Has for years. We figured he was hunting, or walking, or just being Pop. I drove out. Took about 40 minutes from Beaverton. Turned off the county road onto a gravel drive I'd been on maybe twice in my life, wound through a stand of Douglas firs, came around a bend, and there was a house. Not a cabin. Not a shed. A house. A craftsman-style, 2-story, roughly 2,800 square foot house with a wraparound porch, cedar siding, exposed beam work, a stone chimney, and a detached workshop that looked like it could have been on the cover of Fine Home Building magazine. Pop was standing on the porch. He was wearing his work boots and his old canvas jacket. He had a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked at my face as I got out of the truck and he said, "Took a little longer than I planned." I couldn't speak. He walked me through it. Every room. He built this house, built it with his own hands, over the course of 12 years. The foundation was poured in 2014. He did the framing, the roofing, the plumbing, the electrical, He pulled permits and had a licensed electrician sign off on the wiring, he told me, because he wasn't going to burn down my own grandson's house with shoddy work. He did the hardwood floors, white oak, milled from trees on the property. He built the kitchen cabinets. Cherry wood. Hand-dovetailed joints. The countertops are butcher block that he laminated and finished himself. There are 3 bedrooms. 2.5 baths. A mudroom with built-in cubbies. A fireplace with a mantel made from a single slab of reclaimed Douglas fir that he salvaged from a barn demolition in Yamhill County in 2017. The workshop, God, the workshop. It's a 900-square-foot standalone building with a concrete floor, a wood stove, built-in tool storage, and a loft. He wired it with 220-volt service. He installed a dust collection system. I kept asking him why. He kept walking me through rooms. Finally, in the kitchen, I stopped him. I put my hand on his arm. His forearm is still thick, still ropey with muscle, even at 78, and I said, "Pop." "Why?" He set his coffee down on the counter he'd built. He looked at me with those pale blue eyes that have seen more in 78 years than I'll see in a lifetime. And he said, "Because I saw who you are." I lost it. Completely. I'm not a crier. I can count on one hand the number of times I've cried in the last decade. But I stood in that kitchen and I sobbed like I was 12 years old. He let me. He didn't pat my back. He didn't say anything. He just stood there and let me feel it, the way he always has. When I finally pulled myself together, I asked him the practical questions. The property is paid off, has been for decades. The house is fully permitted. He did the work in stages, pulling permits for each phase, doing it right. The total cost of materials over 12 years was, by his accounting, approximately $174,000. He paid for it out of his pension and Social Security, a little at a time. He's already had the title updated. The house and the 7 acres are in my name. He did the deed transfer 18 months ago. He just hadn't told me yet. He hadn't told anyone. Update 1. The phone calls. I called my parents from the driveway. My mom answered. I tried to explain. She didn't understand at first. He built a what? A house, Mom. Pop built me a house. On the Helvetia property. Silence. Then, what do you mean, he built you a house? I mean he's been building it for 12 years. It's done. It's in my name. More silence. Then I heard her say to my dad, away from the phone, David, pick up. Your father built Ethan a house. What followed was about 45 minutes of the most confusing, emotionally chaotic phone call of my life. My dad got on the line. He was quiet for a long time, which is unusual for him, because my dad is a talker. He's a regional sales manager for a medical device company. He talks for a living. But he went quiet. Then he said, he never built me anything. I didn't know what to say to that. Because it's true. Pop and my dad have had a complicated relationship for as long as I can remember. My dad went to college, got a business degree, moved into sales. Pop never said he was disappointed, but my dad has always carried this sense that he failed Pop by not following him into the trades. And Pop, for his part, never found a way to bridge that gap. They coexist. They don't connect. My mom got back on the phone. She was upset. Not angry, exactly, but rattled. Why wouldn't he tell us? Why would he do this behind everyone's back? I don't think it was behind anyone's back, Mom. I think he just did it. But why you? Why not? She stopped herself, but I knew what she was going to say. Why not your father? Why not split it? Why not the whole family? I told her I'd call her back. I needed to think. I called Megan next. My sister took it better than I expected. She laughed, actually. That is the most Pop thing I've ever heard, she said. He spent 12 years building a house and didn't tell a single person. Of course he did. You're not upset. Ethan, Pop and I exchanged Christmas cards. I love him, but I'm not his person. You are. You've always been his person. Everyone knows that. That hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. Because she's right. And I've always known it. But hearing her say it made it real in a different way. Update 2. The family dinner. 4 days later, we all had dinner at my parents' house in Tigard. Pop came. My parents came. Megan and her husband drove up from Eugene. It was tense in a way our family gatherings usually aren't. We're not dramatic people. We're Callaway-level reserved. But this was different. There was something enormous sitting in the middle of the room. My dad brought it up about halfway through the meal. He'd had 2 beers, which for my dad is enough to lower the drawbridge. "Pop, can I ask you something?" Pop looked at him, set down his fork, nodded. "You spent 12 years and $170,000 building Ethan a house. You never said a word. You never asked if anyone else might want to be part of that. You never—" His voice caught. My dad's voice caught. "I've maybe heard that happen once before, at his mother's funeral. You never built anything for me." The table went quiet. My mom was looking at her plate. Megan was looking at me. Her husband, Jeff, was looking at the ceiling like he wished he could astral project out of the room. Pop didn't look away from my dad. He sat there, still as a post, and then he spoke. "I'm going to try to get this as close to verbatim as I can, because it matters. David, I love you. I have always loved you. But you and I, we don't speak the same language. I tried, when you were young. I tried to show you what I knew. You didn't want it. That's okay. You went your way. You did well. I'm proud of you. But I didn't know how to reach you. I still don't." My dad was staring at him. "Ethan," Pop continued. He looked at me, then back at my dad. "Ethan sat on a bucket in my workshop when he was 8 years old and watched me work for 3 hours without saying a word. He didn't want anything from me. He just wanted to be there. And when he grew up, he kept showing up. Not because I asked him to. Because that's who he is. He shows up." He paused, picked up his water glass, took a sip. "I'm 78. I don't have money to leave. I don't have stocks. I don't have a legacy except what I can build with these hands. So I built him a house. Not because I love him more than I love you or Megan. Because I knew what to give him. I've never known what to give you." My dad put his face in his hands. My mom started crying. Megan was crying. I was doing that thing where you clench your jaw so hard your back teeth ache because if you don't, you're going to completely fall apart at the dinner table. Pop looked around the table at his weeping family and said, "Well, this is more emotion than I'm used to." Megan laughed through her tears. That broke the tension enough to keep the evening from becoming something nobody could recover from. After dinner, my dad and Pop went out to the backyard. They were out there for about 45 minutes. I don't know what they said. My dad came back in with red eyes and a different posture. Something in him had shifted. Not fixed. Shifted. He hugged me on the way out and said, "You deserve that house, Ethan." I mean that. I believed him. Update 3, moving in. I gave notice on my rental in Beaverton. My landlord was honestly kind of relieved. He'd been wanting to renovate the unit and bump the rent for the Portland market. I wasn't offended. That's how it works. I moved into the Helvetia house on a Saturday in late October. Pop was there. He'd driven out early and was sweeping the front porch when I arrived with the moving truck. He'd left a 6-pack of beer in the fridge and a note on the kitchen counter that said, in his precise carpenter's handwriting, "The hot water heater is tankless. Give it 10 seconds. Don't be impatient." That's Pop 12 years of secret labor, a $174,000 investment, a gesture of love so enormous it cracked open our entire family, and his parting instruction is about the hot water heater. I spent the first week just walking through the house, touching things, running my hands along the door frames, examining the joints in the cabinets, opening and closing drawers that glide on runners he made himself. Every detail is deliberate. Every corner is square. Every surface is finished with the kind of care that you cannot buy. You can only earn through decades of skill and thousands of hours of work. I found things as I settled in. A drawer in the workshop with a complete set of hand tools, chisels, planes, marking gauges, all cleaned and sharpened and laid out in a custom-fitted tray. In the master bedroom closet, he'd built a hidden compartment, because of course he did, with a fireproof safe already bolted to the subfloor. In the mudroom, the cubbies are labeled with small brass plates. One says Ethan. One says Boots. One says Keys. And one says Next Generation. That last one wrecked me. I don't have kids. I'm 41 and single. But Pop built a cubby for my future children in a house he started when I was 29. He just assumed I'd get there, and he wanted them to have a place when I did. My neighbors, there aren't many out here, it's rural, started coming by. Turns out, some of them knew. Not the full story, but they'd seen Pop working out there for years. An older couple down the road, the Muellers, told me they used to see his truck parked at the property 3 or 4 days a week. He was out here in the summers working until dark. In the winters he'd frame and do interior work. He barely missed a week in 12 years. Mrs. Mueller said something that stuck with me: we always assumed he was building it for himself. A retirement project. When he told us last year it was for his grandson, I thought, well, that's the kind of man they don't make anymore. I'm starting to think she's right. Update 4, the workshop. I need to talk about the workshop, because something happened there that I haven't been able to tell anyone yet. About 3 weeks after I moved in, Pop drove out to show me how the dust collection system worked. He's meticulous about lung protection. Sawdust killed more carpenters than falling off roofs, he told me once, which I don't know is statistically accurate, but I believe him anyway. We were in the workshop. He was showing me the blast gates and the ductwork, and I noticed a section of the wall that was paneled differently from the rest. Beadboard instead of plywood. I asked him about it. He got quiet. Then he walked over and pressed on one of the panels. It popped open on a magnetic catch. Behind it was a narrow shelf, and on the shelf were about 24 small notebooks. Composition books, the kind you buy at a drugstore for $1.50. What are these? Build journals, he said. One for every year. I opened the first one. Dated January 2014. In his handwriting, small, precise, every letter formed with the care of a man who respects the act of recording, were daily entries. What he did that day. What materials he bought. What problems he encountered. What solutions he found. But between the technical entries, there were other notes. Personal ones. About me. March 14, 2014. Poured the footer for the east wall. Ethan called tonight. He's starting a business. Trucking or delivery or something. He sounded scared, but he's doing it anyway. That's the boy I know. September 2, 2016. Hung the porch joists. Ethan's business is growing. He hired 2 drivers. He didn't tell me. His father told me at the Labor Day cookout. The boy won't brag. He gets that from me. November 22, 2018. Finished the kitchen subfloor. Ethan's divorce is final. He called me. Didn't say much. I didn't say much. We sat on the phone for about 20 minutes. I could hear him breathing. Sometimes that's enough. June 3, 2020. Set the mantel. It's the barn fir from Yamhill. It's the best piece of wood I've ever worked. I keep thinking about who will sit by this fireplace. I hope it's someone who deserves him. August 15, 2022. Installed the cabinets. Cherry. They're good. They might be the best work I've done. I'm 74 years old and I think I just peaked. That's either beautiful or pathetic. Probably both. December 1, 2023. The house is done. I walked through it this morning. Every room. I stood in the kitchen and I could see him there. Coffee in the morning. Maybe a dog at his feet. Maybe a wife. Maybe just him. It doesn't matter. He'll fill this house with whatever he needs, because that's who he is. I read all 24 notebooks that afternoon. Pop sat in the workshop on a stool he'd built and sharpened a chisel while I read. He didn't watch me. He just let me be there. When I finished, I closed the last notebook and looked at him. Pop, you wrote about me for 12 years. I wrote about building a house, he said. You just happened to be the reason. I got up and I hugged him. He's not a hugger. He tolerated it for about 4 seconds, then patted my shoulder twice and said, "All right. Let me show you the blast gates." Update 5. 1 month later. It's been about a month since I moved in. Here's where things stand. The house is everything. I don't mean that in a material sense. Although, yes, a 2,800 square foot craftsman on 7 acres with no mortgage is life-changing. I mean that this house has fundamentally altered my understanding of what it means to be loved by someone who doesn't know how to say it. My dad and Pop are talking more. Not a lot more. This isn't a movie. They're not going to become best friends at 62 and 78. But something opened up at that dinner table, and they're both, in their stubborn Callaway way, walking through the door. My dad drove out to the Helvetia property last weekend. Pop met him there. They walked the land together. My dad asked Pop about the trees, and Pop told him about the oaks and the firs, and they stood on the porch and looked at the view of the Coast Range, and my dad said, "You did good, Pop." Pop said, "I know. Megan is fine. She's always been fine. She called me last week and said, 'I hope you know you're going to have to host every Thanksgiving from now on. That kitchen is too nice for you to waste.' She's already planning the menu. Her oldest kid wants to see the workshop. Pop said he'd teach him how to use a hand plane. My mom has come around. It took her a while. She had to process her own feelings about being outside of something so significant. But she came to the house, and she walked through it, and she stood in the kitchen and ran her hand along the cherry cabinets, and she said, quietly, He really loves you, Ethan. He loves all of us, Mom. I know. But he knew how to show you. That's the thing, isn't it? Love isn't just feeling. It's knowing. It's knowing what someone needs and being willing to spend 12 years of your life providing it, without recognition, without thanks, without any guarantee that it will be received the way you intended. Pop didn't build me a house because I'm his favorite. He built me a house because he's a carpenter, and I'm the one who sat on the bucket. I'm the one who watched. I'm the one who learned, not carpentry, but the language he speaks. The language of showing up, doing the work, and letting the work say what you can't. I had him over for dinner last night. I grilled steaks. We ate on the porch he built. The sun was setting over the Coast Range, painting everything copper and gold, and the air smelled like October in Oregon. Wet earth, wood smoke, the last of the season's warmth. He ate his steak. He drank one beer. He looked out at the property and said, "The south fence needs work." I know, Pop. You'll want to get to it before the rains come. I will. He nodded. We sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the most comfortable silence I've ever known. Before he left, he stopped at the porch steps and turned around. He looked at me, really looked, and he said, "You were always the easiest person to love, Ethan. You just never made me guess what you needed." I watched his taillights disappear down the gravel drive. Then I went inside, into the house my grandfather built me with his bare hands over 12 years, and I sat in the kitchen, at the counter he made from wood he milled himself, and I wrote this. I don't know why I'm posting it. Maybe because some things are too big to hold alone. Maybe because I want someone to know that Harold Calloway, 78 years old, bad knee, retired carpenter from Tigard, Oregon, is the finest man I've ever known. Maybe because I want to remember this feeling, this impossible, overwhelming gratitude, before it becomes familiar. Before the house becomes just a house. Before the view becomes just a view. Right now, it's everything. And I never asked for any of it. Edit. A lot of people are asking about the notebooks. Yes, I still have them. They're back on the shelf behind the beadboard panel, exactly where he put them. That's where they belong. Edit 2. For everyone asking, no, I will not be selling the house. Not now. Not ever. You don't sell a cathedral someone built you by hand. You just try to deserve it. Edit 3. Pop doesn't know about this post. He doesn't use the internet. He calls it the machine. I'm going to print this out and give it to him, though. He should know that strangers on the internet think he's something special. He'll probably read it, nod once, and say something about the south fence.